so interesting to me how often we talk about referrals from the standpoint of the benefit to the lawyer who is getting the referral. What I'm really interested to have in this conversation is the fact that it's not actually that only benefit. There's also the benefit to the client. There's also the benefit to the person who's making the referral. So what we're talking about today is how to create that win-win-win using referral fees to actually help clients. Joining me today is Arya Firoozmand. Arya and his co-founders, including one of the founders of LegalZoom, have created an attorney referral platform that allows the best independent attorneys to share matters and ethically share in fees. In essence, what he and his team have done is they've taken a lot of the benefits that big law has, where you've got so many attorneys, knowledge on all these different things, and really tried to empower smaller firms to provide that same level of quality service on very specific areas by incentivizing these referral fees. Thanks for joining me today, man.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add in on your bio?
Oh, that was great. That was a great introduction. I think I'm excited to chat a little bit more about referral fees and what we're seeing in the law and how we can help solo small firm folks better serve their clients.
There we go. Yeah, it's interesting. I get a lot of compliments about the bio, and then I remind people you're the one who wrote it. So that being said, I've got Arya here. So I want to dive in to this. So walk me through what a referral really is. Let's start with that, and then we'll go into what we're talking about here.
Sure. I mean, at its core, right, we think about we're in the business of client service, right? So clients are going to come to us with legal issues, not fully understanding what we do and what we can specifically serve for them. And they're going to come up to you and say, hey, hey, Jordan, I need help with X, right? And so from there, either it's something that you do, or it comes to what we all say, hey, I don't do that, but let me see if I can find you someone who can. And that problem has become more and more exacerbated over the last few years as we've all gone through the pandemic and people have spread out all over the country. And now you have businesses with employees in 5-6 different states. I mean, shoot, even my firm, if I can get 5 people to go to lunch in the office, I think we had a successful day. And so that issue isn't going to go away. So that question of, hey, can you help with this? No, I can't, is going to become more and more prevalent.
Well, and it's interesting because, look, I hammer client referrals because who's a better person to give you a referral than somebody who's actually been through the process? And so I know that's not exactly what we're talking about here, but here's a client who has come to you with more work. Mm-hmm. Like they loved what you did. They trust you to do it well. They want you to help them more and you can't. And there's those lawyers out there, and I've been one of them, so I'm not passing total negative judgment, who are just like, oh no, sorry, can't help you. And like, that's the end of the conversation. So what's that client supposed to do?
And that's the thing, right? We know from a lot of the data that most clients first look to attorneys that they know and trust for referrals for other areas of law. That's the number one way that they try to get work done. And they're coming to you because they trust you, right? They've built this connection with you from previous interactions, previous relationships. And so it's only natural to come to you and say, Jordan, who can I go to here? And I think, as you said, a lot of people are quick to say, I can't help you. Sorry, it's not my area of law, versus thinking of themselves as kind of this general counsel for this individual or this small business and saying, hey, where can I use my expertise of knowing the law and at least knowing other areas of law in a more limited sense, but I can say, okay, that definitely makes sense for you to go here. This person has the right expertise for you. Let me put you in the right places to be successful. So I think it comes down to folks like us looking at ourselves beyond just being a lawyer for this one trademark or this one will or this one trust. We got to look at ourselves as advisors and advocates for our clients. And part of that is putting them in the right places to succeed.
Yeah, because I mean, look, so you ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
I have.
So Barney Stinson, Neil Patrick Harris's character, has this one throwaway line that has stuck with me forever. He's like, oh, I've got my... I don't remember the beginning line. He's like, oh, I've got my car guy, my whip guy, my whatever, and then I've got my guy. If I don't have a guy, I've got my guy who has the guy. And I've thought about that so much, and I don't mean it in a sexist way. It can be a girl, a guy, whatever. But like when you become that person, the client's going to come back to you for every other legal question, and really maybe every question they don't already know somebody for. And now you might be able to send out work to a bunch of different lawyers and realtors and accountants and whomever else, because you helped them in that one moment where like, look, I can't help you, but so-and-so can. And so did a great job.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think a lot of it is just coming down. It's as simple as it almost seems too simple, but it's placing yourself in the client's mind as being that guy, right? It's being that person to tell them, hey, whatever you need. I don't care if it's your dog did something, your son needs something, your business needs something, your friend, come to me first. And if I can't help you, let me figure out a plan of attack to get this taken care of. And I think you'd be shocked if you just went back to your old clients and your current clients and portrayed yourself like that, how much work would come back to you. Because I think these people just don't know, hey, you can do that. You can be that liaison with other folks. That's an amazing service that we provide to our clients. And I think you'd be shocked how much additional work you just get back in the stuff that you normally do because you're top of mind for these clients.
Certainly. And yeah, so coming back to you for more work that you do, coming back to you for more referrals, potentially getting, you send a case out, having that person send a case back. And then obviously here, using the opportunity to get some ethical referral fees from sending that case out as well, that you could pour back into marketing, put back in the client experience pocket, whatever makes the most sense.
That's true. Yeah, no, I think we as lawyers, as things are changing so rapidly, as we all read about, right? We got to find ways to remove ourselves from this transactional relationship with clients, right? And make it more so an opportunity to build a relationship. I see trademark lawyers as one example that always comes to mind. They service thousands of businesses, right? Because it's just so quick. They need a trademark or two and they're on to the next one. But imagine if you were able to retain those relationships over time. You may be one of the most busiest people on the face of the earth, not just for trademarks, but for directing these clients to come back to you and help them find homes for other things that they will inevitably need as businesses who continue growing, from starting their trademark to whatever else they're up to.
So, all right, I want to get into the lawyer perspective. I have a current client, former client, whatever, has come to me and said, hey, I have this other need. It's not something I do. What's your advice to that lawyer? Like, what's the best practice for them to make sure they get that referral out in the right way to the right person?
I think that's the challenge, frankly, that we've been trying to work on, right? It's how do you find somebody who's good? How do you find somebody who's going to be responsive, is going to treat your client in the same way that you are? And so I think a lot of times you start, going through your own network, seeing if you know someone locally that, you can trust and you can send out. Sometimes you'll ask your network, hey, is there anyone else that does X, Y, and Z? But where it gets more challenging is what happens if there's nobody in that network, right? What happens when you need to go beyond the scope of the people that you know and the people that your people know? And so then you start searching online and going through that. But listen, we're all attorneys. It's tough to tell on its surface sometimes who's going to be good and who's going to treat your client the same way that you are. It's not the easiest thing.
Right. And obviously, I think I see a lot of people over incentivizing the benefit to them. So like, hey, I'll send it to so-and-so because so-and-so's giving me 40% back instead of 20% or whatever. But then if the client has a bad experience, you've burned that bridge for that client's future. You won the battle, lost the war type thing.
100%. Yeah, I think that's always the worry in every attorney's mind in referrals, right? Why aren't we doing it more freely? I think probably number one or number two on that list is the fear that the other attorney isn't going to do a good job and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt. And so I think that's the sole reason why we spend so much time on finding somebody that we know and trust, so that hopefully we prevent that outcome that you just talked about, right? So that you get that client to say, hey, Jordan, thanks so much for that referral. This was great. Now I need X. Tell me what I should do with this.
And so I want to back up for a second. So we'll dive into what happens when you don't know the right person to send them to. We want to make sure they get great help. But in a situation where you do know who to send it to, what advice do you have on how to make that connection, how to make that referral? Like your mentor is the perfect one for this. The lawyer next door is the perfect one. Like, exactly who it is. How do we make sure we make that transition as best as possible?
That's a great question. I think a lot of times we, just send over client contact or attorney client contact information. So here's somebody who can help. And I think, remember, these clients are in a very vulnerable position. They don't know what they need to do with this problem that they have. And they came to you because they trust you. And I think it's critical that we put ourselves in the client's shoes and say, hey, they're going to a new person here, someone that they don't have that relationship with, but they trust me from the relationship that we've built, to not leave that client with just a cold email, to give them a nice warm introduction, whether it's a 3-way phone call where you introduce the attorney, give them background on how you've known this person, why they're perfect for what they need, maybe some accolades, so you can take some of that trust and pass it on to this new attorney. Alternatively, you can also send a nice warm email introducing them. But I think the main key is that you need to get yourself slightly involved in that transition to be able to make sure that client is taken care of. And once they're on their way and they've started to build their own relationship as well, then you can take a little bit more of a back seat. But I still tell people all the time, don't just recommend an attorney and then just leave them. I would always check in with that client. Hey, how are things going? How's things with Jordan? Anything else you need? And you'd be surprised by how much they value that check-in, to say, wow, Jordan didn't just pass me off. He was checking in to see how things went and how better he can help me in my business or whatever else I'm working on.
And the same thing for that, that we're talking with the client, the same thing that for the referral source.
Mm-hmm.
How often people talk about relationship building, networking, whatever you want to call it, checking in. And so many people read that as, hey, how are you? Hey, what's up? Hey, what's new? As opposed to being like, hey, spoke to Mr. Smith last week. He was raving about you. How's the case going? Is there anything you need from my office? Can we, here's an update about the case that we have with them, something like that. It's so much easier for you to help build that relationship in both directions by following up with each person about the other, the third leg of the triangle, the third side of the triangle, whatever you want to call it.
It's almost like you can't be too communicative here. Being that person who shows care by checking in, who shows that they're responsive by following up with a client. And as you said so nicely, with the potential handling attorney, hey, how did things go with that client? Were you able to connect? Anything else I can do to help bridge that gap? I mean, you'd be surprised by how far that checking goes.
Totally. All right. So, and then obviously, we'll run into those crazy brick walls where it's like, oh, I need a referral for a business lawyer specializing in franchise law who's also fluent in Russian and has previously worked with businesses in the burger slider industry, whatever it is, who doesn't have a conflict with, the biggest players. What do we do in those situations? Like, what are some of the options?
I'll tell you what the options are currently, because like I said, I think we've built some good solutions to help solve some of those issues. Granted, if you need someone with that level of specificity, you may be on your own. But I think then you start doing what I mentioned before, is you start searching around, you start posting on forums, and you start asking Facebook groups, and you can't vouch for the quality of these people. You have to do a lot of the due diligence on your own to see, are these attorneys that are worth sending these clients to? And then you may not, and I think this is where that referral breaks, regardless of all that effort that you take. If you don't introduce that attorney with that same excitement and passion and trust that you recommend your colleague from down the street that you've known for 10 years, the client can feel that. The client can feel that, and they may not move forward. They may decide it's not the right fit. But in reality, the problem was the client didn't trust your recommendation because they sensed that you didn't wholeheartedly recommend this person the same way that you would a buddy of yours.
So what's we're talking about vetting the lawyer. What are some of the ways that you recommend we vet another lawyer? Like, what are some of the things that you're looking for that we should look for?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, right? Because as attorneys, I think everyone assumes that we can tell what's a good lawyer and what's not. And the truth is, it's challenging, right? You can do a lot of the bread and butter stuff, and granted, that's a lot of the stuff that we do, right? Looking for bar complaints, reading client reviews, looking at schooling, expertise, representative matters, all those things that we can glean from a website and other resources on the internet. But the real truth of it is, I think, is that you have to have a conversation with these people. You have to be able to chat with them and say, hey, is this somebody who's cut from the same cloth as I am? Were they responsive to me? How did they respond to my outreach email? Are they somebody who's going to be as client-centric as I am? Are they going to be an advocate the same way that I am for my clients? Those are very, very hard qualities to figure out just from a website.
Right. If 3 weeks later, after 4 follow-ups, they haven't even responded to you to try and connect to get the case passed over, I can't imagine they're going to be that communicative with the client. But
It's probably
you
going
never
to be
know.
the same, if not worse.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because I mean, like, I'm sure there are lawyers out there that are like, they go to Avo and they're like, oh, this person's, a 10 out of 10 on Avo. Like, just, give them a call. But I'm reminded of, I did a presentation for the Massachusetts Association of Trial Attorneys on personal branding. So some of the statistics are top of mind in my head, that like 68% of people are more likely to recommend a lawyer who has a strong personal brand. And from exactly what you're talking about here, like if that attorney is sharing all of their reviews, online, if they're speaking to other lawyers, if they're presenting at the local bar, like those are some really interesting things that help me even think about the fact that they truly stand behind what they do, which makes me think they do a better job on every case. And so it's interesting to see having that conversation, getting to know them being so important.
No, trust is the name of the game, right? We have to. These clients are in very vulnerable positions a lot of times, and they're in this position, and they need someone that they can trust, and they try to glom onto, and we as attorneys do the same, different trust indicators to say, is this somebody that we can rely on for whatever we need? And so, as you said, attorneys that have shown this brand, that have this strong background, and you can almost feel it through the website, that breaks that barrier that I think we're trying to break, where clients say, hey, I trust this person because of what I see here. And the attorneys that do that, you can tell. We've all seen those sites where we go, wow, we feel this is something that is different than I think anyone's just posted resume in web form. This is somebody that I can get behind, and I think that trust is what seals the deal for a lot of clients.
Any must-dos or any advice for that first conversation? Like, all right, we've got the case, we've connected with this other lawyer, we're starting to talk about it. Like, anything that we have to talk about in that discussion?
I think I'll tell you this. Instead of thinking what you need to talk about, hey, these are the bullet points, imagine you're recommending a parent, a family member. That's who you're referring. It's not just a client of yours. It's your sister, your brother. What would you be looking for in that attorney? What are the things that you're going to say? That's what I need to hear from you. That's what I need to feel to be able to recommend this attorney. Like I said, I wouldn't sit there and start talking about their representative matters and things like that, because granted, most people have websites and LinkedIn, and you can see a lot of that, that experience that they have. I think the call should be on the soft factors that are so critical in attorney-client relationships, trying to glean, is this going to be the right personality match? Is this person going to match the expectations of my client? Is this somebody that I would feel comfortable sending my own family and friends to? If the answer is yes, then I think that's the person that you make that recommendation for.
So, it's a non-romantic first date in so many respects.
Between lawyers.
Right. Well, but it's true. Like, I love the way that you phrase that in terms of, imagine it's your family member that you're sending over. Like, there's, it's sad. And I've been guilty of this one, where there are times where you're in a rush and you're like, oh, it's not that big of a client. Like, oh yeah, I spoke to so-and-so last week. They're a good fit for the case. Like, have it, as opposed to being like, all right, Mrs. Jones, like, let's do a 3-way call. Let me walk you through this. I know this, it's terrible what you're going through, that kind of stuff. It just becomes very interesting the way that we balance how much effort we put into some of these things. But I love the, imagine it's your family member. That really draws you into how important this is.
Yeah. And in your world, personal injury, as like you may say, oh, this is a teeny matter. This is a small issue. It's not a big case. But if you take that same approach with every one of your referrals, I think you'd be shocked by maybe that small case ends up recommending 10 different people to come back and say, hey, Jordan's the person you got to go to. So it's shocking to think it only takes a little bit more effort to deliver that level of service and making that recommendation, but how it could pay dividends for you down the road when you make that good recommendation in that warm, trusted way. You never know what's going to come back from that experience that you gave the client.
Yeah, I'm reminded, I was talking to somebody, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and they gave me this line, how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh man, that's such a good line. And then I saw John Wick 4, like 3 days after they gave me that line that I was giving them credit for. And it's comes up in the movie a couple times. And I was like, yeah, exactly. How you murder one guy is how you murder everybody. Like John Wick nailed it. But it's true. Like, how you treat that person in that one moment is how you handle, in theory, all of your cases or all of your situations. So awesome. All right. So we've had that conversation. We've got a good gut feeling, for lack of a better term. There's no bar complaint issues. There's good reviews online. We start to make that connection. Any tips on getting the client or getting the file or both over to that other lawyer?
Yeah, I think it's once you've had that conversation, let's assume you've made that introduction. I think speed is the name of the game. Make sure that you get whatever necessary information that you need over to the handling attorney, whatever information you promised the client, any follow-up you needed there, get that out as soon as possible. A lot of people will get really excited about an employment agreement that they need for their business on a Tuesday, but if you wait till 2 weeks from now, they may have moved on to something else. So if we want to see successful referrals, once we make that introduction, we have to do whatever we can on our end to facilitate that referral being signed up as soon as possible. While the iron's hot, we gotta jump on it, and that's the name of the game for clients that you acquire through any lead source. But in that critical time where we're referring the client, that's where it's a zero-sum game. Either it happens or it doesn't. We have to make sure that we move as quickly as possible, put them in positions to be successful so that they can hopefully sign that client and help them with what they need.
And obviously, look, follow all of your bar ethics rules. I'd probably have something from writing in the client that I can share the file, or I can share information about the case to help with the referral. I'd want to make sure I get the right information back from the person I'm referring to about the case, so I can be legally responsible, whatever it is. But in addition to all of those things, like from a business best practices or from really a client experience best practice, is there a right amount of involved that you should be once that's made?
In terms of legally, right, different states, and we can chat about this, have different requirements on what you need to do for referral fees. Granted, that's a whole world that we can touch on in a sec. But in terms of business sense, I don't think there's any. It depends, of course, on the practice area, how much involvement makes sense. Personal injury may have a lot more information that you can provide. Maybe trademark law doesn't, right? Maybe you can provide the background that you have and they'll be able to take it from there. But I think above all, as we've said, several times, being as responsive as possible and being as quick as possible once that introduction is done to make that client intro is the biggest thing. I think once you understand what they need to be successful in whatever situation that is, I think doing those things as quickly as we can ultimately is the goal.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, you bring up trademark a couple of times. That's the one that I feel like there needs to be the most communication, because if you're the business lawyer and the business, the name goes out for a trademark that's going to be problematic, there may be some things you want to do. Or if you're the estate planning lawyer splitting up the business as it goes through the finalization of the trademark process, that may be $1 million difference in valuation. So it becomes really interesting to see, like, attorneys need to be working together as a team to maximize their client's interest, as you may have some differing issues between one side of a situation and a different take, even though it impacts the same person or business or entity or whatever you want to call it.
It's true. I mean, we as independent attorneys, more so than ever before, have to work together in ways that we didn't previously need to be able to solve our collective clients' needs, between multi-state issues, multi-jurisdictional issues, multi-practice area issues. I think it's more important than ever before for solo small firm attorneys to work together in unison, same way, frankly, bigger law firms do in delivering the best overall service for our clients.
So I'd love to hear, 2 or 3 of like the most, I want to say, draconian rules that you come across from different states, or the least commonsensical ones. I mean, like a ton. I like to think the majority of our ethics rules are common sense. Don't steal from clients, don't lie to clients, etc. But like, there's got to be some of these just crazy ones. Like in Florida, I know like it's illegal to walk a raccoon down Main Street on a Wednesday. Something like these stupid laws that get stuck on the books. What are some of the ethical concerns that you've come across that maybe aren't as obvious, depending upon from state to state?
You know what's funny? I'll take your question. I'll tell you something that's funny. I think if you asked any attorney, especially about referral fees, which is the rules that we've grown very accustomed to, and Kurt, one of my co-founders, is doing CLEs on referral fees just because he's been so close to it for so long. But I think if you ask most attorneys that question, the number one answer would be that there's some draconian laws on referral fees, that there's all these, they probably couldn't think that there's 10, 12 of these about referral fees that are out there. But the honest truth about referral fees is it's rather straightforward. That's the part that's so shocking to most people, is that generally in the country, you have two different frameworks for referral fees. You have states that follow the ABA model rule and states that follow naked referrals, which are prominent in California and a few other states around here. I think the draconian part is how attorneys just forgot that part from our legal ethics and don't realize that these laws have been here since the 1970s, and folks like yourself in the plaintiff's world have utilized them for decades. And most attorneys still are confused by that and still believe that it's unethical to share fees with other attorneys. That's the number one craziest thing. I think it's if I had a nickel for every time I heard an attorney say, well, isn't referral fees illegal? Yeah, it's illegal to non-lawyers, 100%. But every state has rules as to
except for what, Utah, Arizona, DC. I mean, you got a couple that even have fee sharing with non-lawyers.
And those are going to continue popping up, and those are cutting edge things. But I think referral fees is not only a good thing for, as we've been talking about, for the client, for yourself, for the handling attorney. It's a win-win-win for all, and it's just such a shame that I think everyone misinterprets the law in referral fees to non-lawyers being challenging, as some states are trying to figure out alternatives, or illegal in most cases. And referral fees to attorneys are a very major part of how most attorneys should be practicing.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. So, from the Florida perspective, if I'm sending out a non-PI case, I don't want a referral fee. There's too much competition, the fees, whatever. I'd rather you send me a PI case back. But so many people talk about it from a rules perspective, and you're right, because for us, it's actually more specific how you have to do referral fee or associated attorney's fees on a PI case, contingency fee case, than it is on a non-one, as long as it's signed by the client. And so it's funny because it's a great example that I've come across a bunch, exactly in our state, being what you're talking about, with attorneys thinking it's not an option as opposed to it's actually easier. In theory. I don't think. It's just, to me, it doesn't matter because of the position it puts the client in, as opposed to when they're not paying on a contingency fee case. But from an ethics standpoint, it's easier.
Yeah, and I think it's shocking when people start diving into it and realizing how much analysis and commentary each state has on referral fees. Is because they've put the rules out there and they're telling you how to do it effectively. And as you mentioned, in Florida, there's specific nuances in Florida about referral fees for contingency fee matters, but there's not on hourly and flat fee matters. And the question is why? And it's very obvious. Plaintiffs, contingency fee lawyers have been using referral fees for a lot longer than everyone else. And so our role and what we're trying to build is a community that can bring that world that plaintiffs attorneys have enjoyed for so long of sharing and referrals to the masses, to other practice areas that have never done that before.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you are the ethics govern the location of where the case is being handled. So for me as a Florida lawyer in Orlando, we refer a decent amount of stuff and get a lot of stuff from out of state where somebody got injured at, Disney, Universal, whatever. So it's not that lawyer's ethics when the case comes back here. It's our ethics as it relates to the case. And if I send a case out that's in Georgia, it's the Georgia ethics that control, right?
So it's generally going to be where the client is located. Now, every state has slight nuances, and granted, that's our job to make sure we're putting the right disclosures in on our platform that we've built to ensure that the referral fees are done ethically. That is the challenge of sitting here trying to figure out how to do it the right way. But the general rule of thumb is you're going to follow the rules of where the client is located, because that's who's ultimately going to be signing the client, is the attorney in the state where the client's legal issues arise. So if it's Disney, it's going to be Florida, right?
Gotcha. Okay. So in that situation, if you are a, Ohio attorney listening to this, having a client get injured in Orlando in my backyard, you need to be knowledgeable. Well, thank you. I'll send I'll send the promotional check. No, and total joke, Florida bar. That is completely a joke. There's no situation. No, but then you would have to be aware of the ethics in the state that the case is coming into.
Yep.
In this case, so that creates a whole nother issue, which is funny because in some situations it's easier to refer a case in another state. In other issues, it's harder depending upon what the individual state stuff is. So more reason to have some sort of repository that tracks all this.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And I mean, if I can plug, what we're building here at Overture, that it's built for that specific purpose, right?
Yeah.
We're building Overture let me back up and tell you what Overture is. Overture is a private network of some of the best independent attorneys in the country. And we've built a platform that allows them to refer matters to each other and ethically share in fees. As we've been discussing, right, it's not something that I think we intended on our roadmap to build. It was more so something that we saw when we were working with independent attorneys and in other businesses that we've built. We had these networks of folks, and you would consistently see the need for referrals get more and more broad and more diverse. And as you said, you're going to need that guy who needs the guy who's versed in restaurant law, who speaks this language in this state. How do you find that person? And we saw this problem only getting worse and worse. And so when you realize that 65% of law firms in the United States are under 10 people, and there's no tools that connect those attorneys and allow them to share matters with the trusted community and ethically share in fees, we realize, hey, we got to build something to help solve that.
Well, and that's the part that, like, AI, technology, all of this is a tool that should be able to balance the playing field. If you can create 10 times as much content, you can compete with larger firms. If you can be connected to 1,000 other firms, you have a network that rivals, the biggest of big law. So it's just so interesting to see if people run away from this or run towards the connectiveness that they have access to.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is, as you said correctly, I mean, these bigger firms, right, the 1/3 of law firms in the country, they're taking advantage of technology to bring their employees and their associates and their partners closer together. So you stop feeling like there's multiple offices and multiple departments. And no one's ever focused on the independent attorney, right? Most businesses, most individuals, they don't deal with the big firms of the world. They deal with mom and pops. They deal with solos. They deal with small firms. That's how they access the law. And so when you realize most of the impact that we can have on client lives comes at these small firms, why wouldn't we build tools for those people to give them the power to expand their practice and have networks, as you said, as large as big firms?
So what do you need? Like, for anybody listening to this who's interested in being part of this network of getting and giving more referrals to, specifically knowledgeable lawyers, what do they have to do?
That's it's a funny question, because most people assume that there's some crazy fee to be an Overture member. And the truth is, and this is the funny part, we don't charge anybody a fee to join the community. The challenge, though, is that we're looking for some of the best independent attorneys in the country to join. And so to our discussion of how do you vet a quality attorney, we, of course, do all the background due diligence when somebody applies on our website to join of, bar complaints, client reviews, website accolades, responsive matters, all that stuff that we can glean from a site. But every single person has to have an interview with our membership team where we look at those same qualities that I told you guys in the beginning that you should look for in finding an attorney you can trust. We're doing the same thing, and so if you match the mold of a quality, responsive, client-centric attorney that we're looking for, then we'd love to have you as part of Overture to share matters with other attorneys and sharing fees.
So normally we do this plug at the end, but it makes sense right here. Where do they go? Who do they reach out to? What's the best way for them to get in touch if they're interested in finding out more, potentially submitting the V1?
Yeah, that's just go to overture.law. That's our website. We've built the ability for any attorney in the country to be able to create an account and at least see a little bit of what's going on in the platform, see the quality of the members, see the quality of the referrals. Of course, you can't respond to anything, you can't post anything, you can't message other members. But I think seeing is believing. I think a lot of times when people, trust me, I'm an attorney too, we get sold just constantly of just different things. Buy this, 5 more clients in your inbox every day. This isn't.
But can you handle 15 more clients? Does it make sense for us to have a conversation about that?
Give me a call right now. Yeah, I mean, there's probably 5 in my inbox since we started. And so the truth is, when you're trying to tell people, hey, we're attorneys, we've built a tool to better connect great independent attorneys throughout the country, it's somehow hard to break through that noise. So you can go to overture.law, check out what we've built. If it makes sense for you and you're somebody who says, yes, I fit the mold of what these guys are looking for. I believe I'm one of the best in whatever area of law that I do. I am client-centric. I am responsive. Fill out the form and we'll schedule your interview and hopefully join you to add you to the Overture community.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, and it's so interesting to me. Like Mike Whalen talks about this a ton in Lawyer Forward, like this network of interconnected experts. Imagine the resources imagine the knowledge you have access to. Let's leave it at that. You get this car accident case where there's a very specific airbag issue, or there's a criminal case where there's a very specific use of force requirement. And you'll have somebody who's more knowledgeable at that part, or how these things intersect or whatever. And in a situation where, you may not have the time to vet a fellow lawyer, but having enough good experience with the community that is already vetted, knowing that you have that trust level, it becomes so much easier to build these long-term relationships with clients and ultimately run a more successful law firm. I mean, that's the end goal.
Our goal is the same way you assume when you're part of a big firm that another lawyer in another state who does another area of law, who's also at that big firm, is quality, because you know that they went through the same steps that you did to be a part of that firm. That's the goal of what we want to do at Overture, so that when you refer to a attorney in another state, in another practice area, they went through the same vetting that you did. That they're abiding to the same standards that you do for your clients. So in a sense, all that vetting that we talked about how you could do on your own, we've done that for you up front, and we've built some tools to hopefully make the referral process a little easier for you along the way.
Well, and I remember, I mean, look, I was the benefit of this. So I graduated law school. I went straight to the prosecutor's office. And then a little over 3 years later, I left and opened a criminal defense firm. And so I went to a lot of my colleagues who I had seen like twice in the previous 3 years, who were like, hey, I referred my cases to so-and-so right out of school. They had never done it before. And the clients were meh. So let me give you a shot. And then, 6 months later, they're like, oh my God, the clients are so much happier. I was like, well, as a former prosecutor, I handled 10,000 cases in those 3 years. It wasn't like the 10 or 15 that came in the door here and there. So it's interesting to see how many people will actually get access to a more experienced group of lawyers by having a knowledge or access to some sort of network like this.
Yeah, no, it's true. When you're busy on a Friday and it's almost lunchtime and you need to find a referral by end of day, speed is important. To find 3-4 folks who can respond to your referral by dinner time and say, hey, I can assist with this client, and you don't need to worry about the quality and go through the hours-long process of vetting. That's powerful. That's the goal of what we're trying to build. The reason I give that example is because it is one of my favorite examples. When I see Friday afternoon referrals find a home and they're able to connect with that client before end of day, that's to me, that is very powerful, and that allows independent attorneys to be able to compete with much larger firms that can provide that same level of service.
Well, and look, you're also connecting with a lawyer who is hopefully faster about connecting with the client. And how often do you have that case where it's the security footage overrides every 30 days, where it's if they don't go to a doctor in 14 days, they lose access to some PIP treatments in Florida. There's all these random timelines. Not necessarily statute of limitations, although God forbid that would come up too. You may have somebody who doesn't contact a lawyer for 2 years, 4 years, whatever it is. But there are some of these times where you can make a drastic difference in a case by getting them over to somebody quickly who can start investigating their case quickly as well.
100%. I think it's relevant in PI. It's relevant in business, securities, any area of law, speed is the name of the game, and getting them to someone who can help as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Anything else you want to make sure we talk about or cover as we get towards the end here?
Let me think. I think we've touched on mostly everything. I mean, the truth is we never meant to go down this path. We had some other businesses in legal tech that we were building, but this was more so something that we saw and we realized we needed it for our community and our network. I'll tell you, one of the joys of doing this is I get to talk to a lot of great solo small firm attorneys every day of the week. That's most of our time now, is vetting great folks and trying to get them into the platform. So I guess my closing words would be keep doing what you're doing. The attorneys out there that are being an advocate for their clients, who are going that above and beyond, that are doing this not just for the money, but realizing that we can make a direct impact on our clients' lives. Those are the folks that are making a difference in the world. Those are the folks that are impressing me, and those are the folks that give us all the good names. So keep doing what you guys are doing, and if it makes sense for you guys to be a part of Overture, we'd love to have that conversation.
Well, and last time I saw the numbers, which at this point was, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, we had about 1.3 million attorneys in the country with about 400,000 law firms. And so if you sit there thinking that's about 3 attorneys per firm, but then you remember you've got, Morgan with 1,000 attorneys, you've got Schutz and Bowen, you've got, some of these gigantic firms, you've got all the government agencies, all the in-house lawyers. The average firm probably has 1 lawyer or, or less than 2 lawyers. So that's the norm.
No, every time I go out with my wife and child, we go in Los Angeles here, you go out to Westlake or you go to Camarillo, and then you always see the law office. And I always look that up to see what do they do, what area of law that they do. And it's always so fascinating when you see that and you say this person out here, maybe not in the metro LA, is doing their work and they're building their clientele. And I'm sure that they have constantly issues that they can't service. What do those folks do? So anyways, it's always fascinating for me now, being in this world, to see just the sheer number of law firms that are out there and the work that they're doing.
There we go. All right. So for everybody watching this, next week we've got Lori Gilbertson on. Lori, former big time prosecutor, did a bunch of major cases, talking to us about winning the most important case, courtroom communication tips for life. So now Lori, still practicing lawyer, but also works with lawyers on the communication, on taking some of those really good courtroom strategies, applying them to the business of law, applying them to life, and really seeing, what you can get about it. So if you've ever wanted to look at somebody you care about and yell objection to them in a modern setting, this is the episode you got to check out. That will air on next Thursday, July 13th, 6 p.m. right back here. So next Thursday, July 13th, with Lori Gilbertson, talking about courtroom communication tips for life. With that being said, Arya, we've shared so much here. I think there's a ton that people can pull out of this, whether they join the Overture Network or not. There's a lot of insight in how you make good referrals, how you vet lawyers, a ton of cool things. But if somebody's been listening for the last, 50 minutes, and they remember nothing else that you said, what would be the most important takeaway? What's the biggest nugget of wisdom? How do we help more of those solo law firm attorneys be the exhibit A of a successful attorney?
No, to me, that's simple. It's thinking of yourself as more than just an attorney who does X for the client. Think of yourself as an advocate for all of their legal needs. If they're coming to you, they probably don't have a Rolodex of other attorneys that they know. And understanding that your role to that client may be broader than just that one legal issue that you're solving. And remembering that, hey, if you can build that relationship through that work that you've done, that's going to pay dividends for you and the client for years and years and years to come. So I would tell every independent attorney out there, think of yourself as an advocate beyond just the work that you do for these clients.
And so with that being said, anyone smart enough to want to connect with you more, get to know what you have to say, more detail, what's the best way for them to connect so they don't have to go back on the video or audio and get it?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Arya Firoozmand, of course. Overture.law is there. You can go to overture.law and we're all accessible by email. Feel free to send us an email, chat. Love to chat with attorneys all over the country and learn about what you do to help move clients along and make sure that their needs are taken care of. So that's the best part of this business, frankly.
Awesome. Well, Arya, thank you for being with us. To everybody who watched and listened to this, thank you so much for your time. We hope that you had a blast. I know I learned a bunch. I'm hoping you did as well. And we'll see you back here next week for Courtroom Communication Tips for Life, winning the most important case. Until then, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of a successful attorney, please check us out at legalesemarketing.com, EASE.